This meeting is called to order. This is the meeting of the Finance Investment Committee of the Vallecitos Water District for Monday, November 21st, 2022 at 4:30 p.m. at the district office. First will be public comment, and seeing none, we'll dispense with that. So we're on to items for discussion. The first being Twin Oaks Valley Road Sub-Area Master Plan.
Yeah, Chair Ellithorpe, this item was taken to the Engineering Committee recently, but there's a financial component to the project, so we wanted to take it in front of the Finance Committee as well. And the dynamic duo of Jason and Elizabeth will be presenting this item.
Dynamic duo, that's a first.
Let me know.
Try not to. Good afternoon, Finance Committee. We're here today to talk about the Twin Oaks Valley Road Sub-Area Master Plan. This discussion will be focused on the sewer in Twin Oaks Valley Road, north of Mission Road and south of the Twin Oaks Reservoir. And the sewer sheds hatched here in color on this exhibit are the properties that drain into the sewer that we will be talking about today. The district's master plan is a growth document that identifies future water and wastewater demands based on the city's projected population increase in accordance with their general plan. The document also identifies future capital improvement projects for district facilities and their funding sources to accommodate the growth per the city's general plan. Our master plan identifies upsizing an existing 8-inch sewer in Twin Oaks Valley Road, as shown here on this exhibit. The capital project is from Borden Road to just south of Cashew Road, and it identifies replacing the existing 8-inch diameter pipe with a 15-inch diameter pipe. The master plan identifies this as a Phase 4 project, which is construction between 2031 and 2045. The reason this was identified in our master plan as a Phase 4 project was primarily because of the Newland Sierra project, which is located much further north on Twin Oaks Valley Road off of this exhibit. But that Newland Sierra project was anticipated to be developed after year 2030, which is consistent with Phase 4 in our master plan. So working with applicants on 3 development projects we're working on. Shown here is the Mulberry 9-lot housing, single-family housing project, the Kitty Academy, and the Twin Oaks Fuel Station project. We prepared water and sewer studies for each of these 3 developments within this sewer basin. And the water and sewer studies determined that this existing Twin Oaks sewer main is at or over capacity for current sewer connections. Meaning that really the CIP project we saw on the previous slide identified in our master plan should be upsized to accommodate future sewer connections in this sewer basin. The water and sewer studies for these 3 projects determined that the existing 8, 10, and 12-inch sewer needs to be replaced with 10 and 15-inch sewer to accommodate future connections. So to accommodate more connections, staff is recommending that the district or the CIP projects identified in our master plan, which is currently identified as a developer-funded project, which does not take funding from the district's capacity fund. Staff's recommending that we change that CIP project to a district-funded CIP project so that we can construct these sewer improvements prior to Phase 4. So our proposal and solution to accomplish this is with a sub-area master plan of the Twin Oaks Valley Road sewer. So a sub-area master plan studying this sewer shed, it would determine how much capital facility fees will need to be increased to change this to a district-funded and constructed CIP project. With that study, we would evaluate how these capital facility fees would be increased, whether that would be spread through just the sewer connections within the sewer shed or spreading those costs to all sewer connections with any property within the district. So the next steps, we would like to bring forth a recommendation to the board for approval of a budget to start working on a sub-area master plan. We anticipate that this would be a sewer capacity fund budget increase of approximately $100,000. After budget is approved, staff would hire a consultant to prepare the sub-area master plan and work on updating the cap fee model, so we would know how much cap fees would need to increase to fund this as a district CIP project. And then we would bring forth a recommendation to the board for a capital facility fee adjustment. So with that, we are looking for support from the Finance Committee to bring forth a budget adjustment to the board for approval so staff can start working on the sub-area master plan for this sewer shed. And with that, if you have questions, I'm happy to answer.
All right, any questions?
I just want to make sure I'm following. So you said originally that this length of pipeline was scheduled to be refitted based on the anticipated Newland Sierra development. The Newland Sierra development is not going forward, but now you're saying that this length of pipeline is already at capacity, so we need to do it anyway. Is that right? We need to upgrade it anyway?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and you're asking, and since we don't have a development that is nearby that can fund this upgrade, you're asking for us to approve moving forward with a study to see how much it would cost if it was a district-funded project.
One point of clarification. So when we said developer funded, it was a developer-only project, so the existing upgrade that was anticipated to be built by Newland Sierra, if they were to develop, was going to be built solely by Newland Sierra without any funds coming out of the district's capacity fee account, which is funded through collection of capacity fees from developers. Changing this to a district CIP, it still would be funded from collection of capacity fees. So part of the scope is not only to figure out the size and the scope, the cost of the project, but also to upgrade our capacity fee study and model to include this new cost within our cap fees so we could appropriately collect it from developers. So none of it's coming from ratepayer money or existing customer money. It'd all be coming from the developer side of the house. But instead of being paid solely by one developer for their project, it'd be spread between all developments.
I gotcha. And, you know, this is a two-lane road. It looks like it's going to be quite a lot of tear up. So how would we mitigate traffic through that area? Because this doesn't look like it's a small project.
Yes, so appropriate traffic control will have to be implemented. I would imagine that probably, since there are already 2 sewer mains in Twin Oaks Valley Road, that we would probably upgrade the new sewer, remove the old sewer and put the new sewer in the same place. So I would anticipate that would reduce the amount of impact on how long it would take to construct the project, because you're basically putting it in a trench that's already been excavated. But there would be traffic control that would have to be implemented appropriately.
Yeah, and we'd go through the city or the county. Is all of it incorporated or
City.
mostly city? So
Yeah.
the areas within the city would approve the traffic control plans and make sure that we're doing everything
Is that
appropriately.
2-lane in that area, or is it?
There's portions that are 4-lane.
It's 4.
Yeah.
The northern portion would be. The northern portion is 2 lanes, but most of it's 4 lanes. However, you know, there's a school towards that northern portion by Cassu, so we'll have to work around the school schedule. But it's part of our normal process. Jason's team reaches out to the school district and everything else to figure out if there's any restrictions.
Is there a median in the 4-lane section?
I don't believe there's a median anywhere in that section of the road.
Okay, that's too bad.
And I would add one thing, just to clarify on the developer-funded portion of it. It's true that ultimately development would pay for all this project, but since there's no one big developer to go build it, the district would build it, but we'd have to get money to build it, and then we'd be repaid over time as development occurred in there. So whether we issue bonds or do something else, there would be an initial outflow of capital, and it would be recovered over time as development occurred.
So do we know the approximate impact on the sewer reserves, or is it too soon to know?
Too soon. I think the study would help us to
Okay.
determine all of that, so.
Well, I certainly support the process.
Yeah, I support the process too.
Right. Thank you.
And when would that go forward to the board?
The next board meeting.
Next board meeting, December. Okay. So December 14th.
All right, thank you.
And Chair Elitharp, if it's okay with you, we'd like to switch the order of the next two items.
Okay. So next up is annual investment policy update.
All right, I think Wes is going to kick that one off.
Thanks.
Okay. Good afternoon, members of the board. Welcome back. It's been a while. April?
The last finance committee meeting we had? That's pretty exciting. This is on now. Okay, good. Red means go. Okay, so today we have a couple of items for you. We are required to bring our annual investment policy to the board for an update every year by 30 days after the end of the calendar year. So today we're planning on bringing the investment policy to the board on the December 14th meeting. So Jason Schmidt from Chandler Asset Management is here today to discuss changes that they're recommending for the investment policy. So he'll kick it off, and actually before I do that, I think I have, that's the Finance Committee party page. And then
You
we
got some
have-
new stuff on there. Wait, can you go back?
Yeah, so this is for the Finance Committee, so this one was created specifically for you guys. Like, I have two of them,
Okay.
two
There's like
whole
a-
creative pages.
There's like a input and then a wheel and then outputs. That's new.
Yeah,
Yeah,
see?
I appreciate the creativity there. Thank you.
Creating order out of that chaos.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's right.
And the little people down in the corner that?
Yeah, they're working hard. And they're all putting the puzzle together, so it's, yeah. A lot of time and effort went into this, you can tell. Probably more than the presentation coming up here, but that's okay. So the agenda. So yeah, we're gonna talk first about the annual investment policy. After that, we'll go over the audit results and the ACFR now, that the abbreviation is now changed. And Shannon's actually here to talk about the ACFR and the results of the audit. And after that, it'll just be a short discussion on GASB 68 and the impacts. So with that, I will let Jason kick it off. Let me see if I can stop sharing and get his screen over here. And that doesn't change by itself. So let's go to Zoom. I guess I have to try to stop sharing first. Go here. I'll start in the middle. There you go, Jason's all yours.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And red means go, right? All right.
Red means go, yeah.
All right, perfect. And for those of you that don't know me, my name is Jason Schmidt. I'm with Chandler Asset Management. I'm a co-CIO. I've worked with Chandler Asset Management now for close to 30 years now, really managing public funds. Typically, you see Jenny Linkowitz, so I'm hoping to fill some big shoes here this evening as far as going through the investment policy. And so when I move forward from here, make sure I have this. There we go. I'm just going to go through a few of there's not too many changes that we have here or recommendations, so I'm just going to go through them kind of one by one here. This is really just updating the policy to include, as far as looking at institutions that are eligible, institutions that are licensed by the state, so those are broker-dealers, and then also members that are also federally regulated by the Security Exchange Commission. And so really it's just kind of updating those to make that list a little bit more robust than it was before. And then as we move forward from there, here you can see that we're looking to potentially or recommend increasing the amount from 25 to 30% per issuer for federal agency securities. Remember that these are agency securities that are guaranteed by the agencies themselves. These securities would be like those for Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Federal Farm Credit Bank, so very highly rated institutions, institutions that have been around for a long time and have a government, some sort of government entity associated with them. So it's a GSE, government-sponsored enterprise. And so looking to increase that. Reason being is that we're not seeing as many bonds anymore from Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And so looking to potentially increase that from that 25 to 30% as far as what's allowable there. Then as we move forward from there, basically we have some changes to the commercial paper language. So there was a change that was made by the legislature, a couple of different things here, looking really to align that first part of it with just explaining what that is as far as the commercial paper. And then the second line down there, what you can see is that if the district is to have over $100 million in assets, it can then buy up to 40% of its assets in commercial paper, but that does sunset January 26, 2026, depending upon what happens with this legislation. If there's nothing that happens, it sunsets, goes back to 25% of the portfolio. And why did the legislature do this? When you think about it, you have different counties have always been able to buy 40%. Also, you can see that special districts and things like that are starting to get larger as far as just their overall size. So allowing them to have that liquidity and some of those other different types of instruments that allow for them to keep enough liquidity on their own without potentially having to go out and potentially go into a pool and things like that. So presenting those opportunities. And then as we move forward from here, this is just showing the table. So really this replaces on the federal agencies or the GSEs from 25 to 30%. And then what you can see is also on the bottom there, you can see 40% if the AUM of the district is greater than that of $100 million. Also, we have some language. We instead of just saying money mutual funds, we put money market mutual funds, so just a cleanup item there. And then this is really looking at if a security were ever to be downgraded. And so basically changing some of the language there, allowing us to have some flexibility as far as if we need to take action quickly, but also making sure that we inform the district of the action that we have taken there. And so you can see that basically looking at the ineligible piece of it. So if the securities become ineligible for additional purchases, meaning it falls below those parameters that are in your investment policy. For corporate securities, let's think about that as securities rated A or better. And then when you look at the second piece of that, when you look at that downgrade language, looking at being able to take timely action on the portfolio if needed, but also ensuring that there's a check back mechanism there for the district. And then finally, if the security is downgraded and it remains, that it's basically that security is going to be reported to the board of directors on an ongoing basis, so it provides that transparency at the same time. And then moving from there, I think that's all we had. Just make sure that I'm not missing anything. Everything else here is really just looking at the glossary. So that's all the changes that we're recommending this time. And so I can take any questions that you may have about this.
Okay, questions?
So it sounds to me like these recommendations that you're making are, they are not novel. Other agencies do this. Can you tell me if there are other agencies that are comparable in size to ours that are implementing these strategies? They seem to me, I appreciate that it gives us more flexibility, but they also seem a little bit riskier. So can you speak to that, please?
Sure. So like other water districts that are in close proximity, Rancho California Water District, not too far away. Also, when you look at the city of San Marcos also has some similar language that's part of that. And so when you look at the biggest change that's out there is really the commercial paper change, which would increase that from 25 to 40%. I would say Chandler has approximately 150 to 200 clients that are in the state of California. Probably about 80 to 90% of those clients have adopted that piece of the legislation.
The AUM gate of 100 million, where do we stand currently? Are we close to that?
I think we're at 57 million.
All right, not too close.
Oh, not too close.
Okay. All right. Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
What are you looking for from us? A recommendation or?
Anything formal or?
No, I think we'd like to, it's going to go forward to the board, and we'd like to include a sentence in the board item, the staff report to the board that says the finance committee supports the recommendations.
Yep.
Supportive.
Okay,
I do as well.
all right.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Jason.
Okay, this item 3 will be audit discussion and government accounting standard board statement 68, GASB 68 impacts.
Yeah, so this will be the audit results and the ACFR, and Shannon Ayala is here to present the results of the audit. And this will just be an overview of what we did during the audit, not so much the financial statements themselves. And then sharing.
Am I controlling this or are you?
Yeah, as soon as it comes up, I'll give it to you.
Okay.
There you go.
Can I move this over here? Since I'm not a lefty. Okay, good afternoon. As Wes mentioned, I am here to report on the results of the audit for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2022. When all is said and done, we will issue the annual comprehensive financial report on December 2nd, 2022. We will issue an unmodified opinion, which is the highest level of opinion that can be received. And it will indicate that the financial statements and footnotes are presented fairly and in all material respects and in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. We'll also issue the communication to those in governance, the end of audit letter, as well as the government auditing standards opinion, which is the internal control letter. So the results of those are Wes and his team were very well prepared for the audit, and we're still working through a few items, but as soon as we ask a question, we get a response, so that's helpful. We didn't have any audit adjustments detected as a result of audit procedures, and we don't have any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in internal controls. A couple areas of audit focus were the implementation of GASB 87 this year, which is for leases. It essentially got rid of operating leases as known in the accounting world for all of time, I think. And what this is a standard that basically requires each organization to evaluate the leases that they have, that they're paying money out, as well as bringing money in. And you may have heard our discussion earlier related to the cell tower leases and road leases. So the district has about 5 leases that qualify for reporting under GASB 87. So Wes and I were working through those and putting the finishing touches on that. But when it's all said and done, it will result in about a $600,000 lease receivable being recorded, as well as a deferred inflow, which is sort of the bottom half of the balance sheet and almost similar to an unearned revenue, but fancy name GASB came up with. As a result of that implementation, we did review all the leases, and we'll verify that the calculations are done correctly and that all of the footnotes have been updated in the financial statements according to the standard. We also did do some review of employee expense reimbursements this time around. So we selected 5 expense reimbursements, obtained all the supporting documentation for those, ensured that that supporting documentation was the reimbursement was supported by that amount, and that the expense was for an allowable business expense, and we did not have any exceptions noted during that testing. When you do see the final report, I want to point out that there are some changes in the audit opinion as a result of the implementation of SAS 134, which is a statement on accounting standards. So basically moved the audit opinion and the basis for the audit opinion to the beginning of the letter instead of towards the end. The audit opinion will also have an emphasis of matter related to GASB 87 in it when we do issue it. And then the communication to those in governance letter, the end of the audit letter, that added some responsibilities of the auditor in relation to the audit and the communication of significant audit matters that come up during the audit, and then also added some language regarding our compliance with ethics and independence requirements. Those things are related to the preparation of financial statements and then also proposing any journal entries. So it really, we have to indicate how we mitigate those risks to our independents, and that is done by providing Wes with the financial statements and having him and his team do a review and certifying that they do that review. And then we use an independent quality control reviewer in our office. It doesn't have anything to do with the audit process or our audit, but reviews the whole file and the report before issuance. And then we also report on significant risks that are identified during the planning stage of the audit, which for this year was the GASB 87 that I previously mentioned. So that I can answer any questions that you had about the audit process or the results.
Yeah, I had a question on the communications to those in governance.
Yes.
Now, before the audit starts, it
Yes.
seems to me like you contact the board.
Yes,
Okay, I don't particularly remember that one this time.
this year we did a direct communication with Director Pennock. We sent him a fraud
okay.
questionnaire and did that communication. It sort of varies from year to year, so in the coming year, we'll probably send a letter to everyone on the board.
Okay, so it changes.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Oh, you rotate it through, and you check in with one director?
It can be one director or the whole board. So there have been times in the past where it has been with the entire board. This
Right.
year it was just with Director Pennock.
That's what I couldn't remember having been contacted.
Yes.
Okay.
And then we'll be discussing our plan at the end of the year for the coming year, but most likely will be to contact or send a letter to each board member.
Okay.
Okay, why did you choose Director Pennock?
My staff, the in charge was the one that did it, and I did not ask him why he chose Director Pennock, but I
mean,
can
are they
find
drawn
out for
out
you.
of a hat or?
What?
Are they drawn out of a hat?
Sometimes it's random,
Yeah.
sometimes, it's the first person on the list.
Yeah, I didn't realize
I like
that.
to change it up.
Okay. All right, any other questions?
The $600 lease receivable,
600,000.
600,000 lease
Yes.
receivable. Was that anticipated, and so it showed up in this current budget, or will it show up in the next budget?
So those are revenues that we've been receiving for a long time.
Okay.
And they're ongoing revenues that we'll be receiving until 2042. So they've always been in our budget.
Okay, great, thank you.
What in particular, what are the major leases? Just name a couple.
Yeah, so in going through new GASB statements every year, we go to seminars and conferences and learn about what they're doing and what they're asking us to implement. So, a while ago it was GASB 68 where they said you have to put your net pension liability on the financial statements. So this time they said, well, we want to look at, if people have these leases that they've had for a long time, that they're just having a minor expense every year or a minor revenue received every year, we want to, if we know they're 30 to 50 year leases, we want you to put that on there in bulk. So if you know you're gonna have it for 50 years, we wanna see
The total
this
value.
big receivable now and then amortize it over the 50 years versus just putting on $5,000 a year in a revenue.
Okay, so they aren't big leases, they're just cumulatively, there's,
One of them is $600 a year.
okay.
So we have 5. Most of them, I think 4 are $2,200 a year. 3 are about $2,200 a year, 1 is $600, and the other one is $4,000 a month. That's the biggest one. And that's really probably the only reason why we were required to actually do something for GASB 87, because that's the only one that met the materiality threshold.
And,
Yeah.
and what is that one?
That's Cat Holdings, which I believe is AT&T.
Yeah, it's a cell tower up by our metal arc tanks. Up by our metal arc tanks.
Okay, all right, thanks.
And the other smaller ones are just like access easements that usually cell tower companies have to get across our property to get to where their tower is.
All right.
Wes, are you looking for?
We actually have
support?
one more
Okay.
item for discussion.
Okay.
Let's escape this. I might reach out this, though. This is where the bus comes by. Just get them Okay, so the last item we wanted to discuss tonight is just to make the committee and the board aware of impacts of GASB 68, which, as I mentioned, is another, GASB is the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. They make all the generally accepted accounting principles for government entities. So they come out with these standards, and it seems like they come out with 6 a year, and we have to look through them and say which ones apply to us and which ones don't. GASB 68 was effective in 2015 for most governmental agents, actually all governmental agencies, I believe, and required them to report their net pension liability on the financial statements. Most pensions are held by CalPERS. CalPERS has $440 billion in assets. And fortunately, unfortunately for the district, we're in a miscellaneous pool, which is a pension pool. So agencies at the time that were under, I think, 100 employees when they signed up for CalPERS, if you were under 100 employees, you got stuck in a, how do they stuck? You got put into a pool, whereas if you were over 100, you got your own plan. So you'd have your own accounting for the plan. We're in a miscellaneous pool, so that puts us in a large group. And the reason for that was to mitigate risks. If we had 50 employees or whatever, and they were doing the analysis, looking at our earnings and contributions, and 25 of those people didn't meet, like they retired early, or early would be the problem, because then they'd have less contributions. So the pool would suffer from that, and they'd have to spike the employer contributions, so it costs us a lot of money. So by putting them all together, you combine the assets and you mitigated the risk. It just made it easier for agencies. That's a long story, but a little bit of background on how that works. So we're in this pool, and GASB 68 requires us to report our net pension liability. And we've been going through the budget process, and we had our unfunded accrued liability where we're paying down the unfunded accrued liability. So we wanted to get as close to fully funded as possible. The goal was 3 years to fully funded. And this year we went through the budget process. I said, we're not going to make the $2.6 million payment because I expect we'll be fully funded due to the 2021 earnings. CalPERS actually achieved a 21.3% earnings in 2021. And as a result, had huge gains on their investments. And we actually had, I think it was over a $10 million gain on our own portion of the investments. And it brought us to fully funded. Our last actuarial evaluation report, and I'll go on to the next slide before I keep talking. So our last actuarial evaluation report actually showed us a net pension asset, which means we were overfunded by $234,000. So we were right on there. We said we were going to be fully funded. We were at 100% funded. It worked out really well for us. We'll be looking at it again this year as we go through the budget process with the actual numbers from the valuation and forecasting that forward. But the reason I bring this up is CalPERS, GASB requires us to report a net pension liability, and CalPERS is always a year behind, sometimes 2 years behind in their reporting. So what's happening is, and because a lot of agencies, most agencies do a fiscal year of June 30th, CalPERS is still working on their report, which they put out in August for the previous year. So when we start preparing our financials, or other agencies, they actually start with the 2020 actual valuation. So 2 years ago. And then they have a tool that they let us use where they forecast the 2021 numbers, and then they use that for the financial statements. So the numbers you see on our financial statements are actually estimates using a CalPERS valuation tool that's approved by the GFOA, the Government Finance Officers Association, and GASB. So it's an accepted methodology using the CalPERS tool. Unfortunately for us this year, the results of that tool and that estimation showed up for 2021, and this is just an excerpt from the draft financial statements, which we're still working on finalizing. But you can see 2022, we're showing a net pension asset of $4.5 million. So the reason I bring that up is because I want the board to be aware that while it looks like we overpaid our unfunded accrued liability by $4.5 million, it's an estimation. We actually know that in 2021, the results were a $234,000 net pension asset. So this is overstated because of the timing and the estimation done by CalPERS. So that's that, and I just wanted to this states that 2021 was 234 is the actual, and then the variance resulted from the valuation date of 2020, and it's just GASB and GFOA accept the methodology. So that's really all I wanted to discuss. So you'll be getting a draft of the financial statements before the December 14th. You'll be getting the final financial statements before the December 14th board meeting. And today we're not looking for anything. This is really informational, just that you've seen these items. We've discussed it with you. On the 14th, we will be bringing the full ACFR to the board for acceptance.
Okay.
So-
Yes, I mean, it's totally a timing issue, so.
Yes. So remind me, when will we know about this $4.5 million, if it's truly $4.5 million?
So in August of next year, we will get the 2022 results.
Okay.
So in the meantime, as we go through the budget process, though, I've actually developed my own methodology for looking at the pool balances and our portion of the pool balance, because we know what percentage of the pool balance. I can take that and put in CalPERS actual earnings, because they've already reported their earnings for 2022. They actually achieved a 6.1% loss this year. So for us, what that means is they expected a 6.8% return. So because they didn't achieve the 6.8 and they had a 6.1% loss, it's actually a 12.9% loss to our pool. So we're gonna take a loss to the pool in general, and it'll probably end up in net pension liability for 22. I'll present all of that to you with numbers as we go through the budget process. And we'll look at the UAL funding policy and decide where, we'll start putting something together, bring it to the board for discussion, and try to decide how funded we want to be. If we want to, General Manager Prum and I were discussing this, if the board wants to be 95% funded, or how we want to set that policy, we can talk about that, and that'll help us go through the budget process.
I guess not only how funded do you want to be, but whose estimate do you want to use?
Yeah, and what data are you using?
Yeah,
Well,
that's probably up for discussion too.
I would not use this
Yeah.
information. Because we have the actual reports from CalPERS, and I work with actuaries, in the meantime, talking to them, finding out what the actual balances are. Using the actuarial evaluation are they're the actual numbers, so there's really no other source except for to start there and then work forward with it.
That makes sense.
Thank you.
All right, yeah,
Great work.
thank you. Is that it?
That's it. That's all we got for today.
I think, let's see, any other business? Seeing none, we're adjourned.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.